So Medley Pharmacy specifically, works in the healthcare industry, and we're regulated by HIPAA. So Slack, being a critical tool that we use to accomplish our business objectives, is unfortunately out of the box not HIPAA compliant. Part of the process after getting on the applicable tier and instituting administrative controls is this quasi-optional technical control of limiting exposure of PHI in Slack where it cannot be posted. So in private channels, it's fine. In public channels, it's not. And our initial intent was to identify a product that would allow us to automatically overcome the hurdle of human behavior, because that's the problem, right? You can tell everybody, but they forget. You can schedule 50 trainings, but this one person wasn't able to attend. So through a DLP solution, we looked for automatic redaction of PHI and PII in the non-approved channels in Slack.
Okay. When you say you're HIPAA regulated, like you take that pretty seriously. Like HIPAA ends up being different things for different people. Where do you draw the line on HIPAA? Like some people are very specific about certain aspects of HIPAA. What were the specific areas of HIPAA which you were trying to solve for in the web of regulation then there within that?
Yeah, great question. It is gray, and I love that because it allows us to find modern solutions to interpreting it. Specifically, what we were concerned about is exposure of patient information in public Slack channels. So while you can get Slack, you can pay for a certain tier, you can establish a BAA, you still can't put PHI in public channels in Slack. And we have over 700 employees. We have hundreds of public channels. So the inevitability seemed to be certain that this would occur. In order to combat this, we are seeking, or we were looking for a DLP tool to be able to redact that information. And out there's so many tools that kind of do this, but, well, let me take it back. There's so many tools out there that claim to do this. But when we dug in and had a trial with some, we ran into two hurdles. The first of which is they're structured in such a way that it was not easy to achieve the functionality that we wanted to achieve through the licensing model. And two would be that they flat out didn't have that sort of functionality. And it was unfortunate because a lot of these claim to be able to catch and redact PHI. And you'll find that the way that they define PHI or PII is not actually how it's defined under HIPAA. So HIPAA has 18 key indicators for what is PHI. And oftentimes you have to take context into consideration. For example, a name can be PHI. But if I want to say, hey, James, in Slack, I don't want that redacted. Now, these services would redact it. But it was through your product, Polymer, that we were able to achieve both the context and the specific text redaction that we were after.
And in terms of how Polymer was installed and how did he start using it, and how out of the box, obviously, it's a every context is different for every organization. Maybe walk through that journey a little bit, how that adoption happened and how you got to 85+% accuracy, and what was the process like?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're near 100% accuracy. I mean it when I say that this product has exceeded our expectations, especially when those expectations were initially set by competitors. So the ease of installation, I mean, the installation process was very easy. So it required 2 approval workflows from an administrator, which should be required in Slack. And that took roughly 15 minutes. It was really no problem at all. I think the differentiator here was the hand-holding. So Polymer was there for us when we needed assistance with the installation, of which was minimal. But we had it up and running in the same day.
Awesome. And how has what are the outcomes so far? You've been running it for some time now. As an organization, what have you checked off? What has taken the load off your shoulder?
Yeah. Oh, so much. So first of all, any product is going to require some fine tuning and customization. It's unavoidable. And Polymer iterated on this faster than any other product in the space, both through our testing and then once we signed up and used the product. Polymer did support our requested changes almost immediately. It was incredible. So once we reduced our false positives and false negatives to borderline zero, I'll be honest, we've been hands off with the product. It just runs automatically. And every day it catches 2 or 3 examples of PHI, which an individual is posting in public channels. So it's an automated system now that essentially performs the work of what our security engineer was doing, and couldn't do well as a human. She can't scan hundreds of channels every day. So we had to be on our outlook for PHI, and we had to designate champions in all these spaces to look out for it. And now we just have Polymer deployed in these channels.
And how are you looking about applying HIPAA policies in future for other platforms? How does that change your outlook in thinking about SaaS and privacy and HIPAA on different platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. So Medley is a tech-first company, and you'll hear that a lot nowadays, but what does that mean? So we primarily operate in a cloud and SaaS architecture model, and we need solutions that are able to help us keep our walled gardens for PHI protected. So when we establish a BA with a company such as G Suite or Google Workspace, to be able to put PHI in Drive, or Slack to be able to put PHI in private channels, we need some solution to be able to plug in securely and easily and catch instances of which this might be exfiltrated or accidentally posted into the wrong locations. And that's our goal with Polymer, is to use it with more SaaS services for this purpose.
Great. And just last question in terms of transparency with pricing, and how has that experience been compared to the competitors, especially when you're done with them?
Yeah, one of the things I loved about the process here was they were upfront and very clear about what the pricing would be. I think, as I mentioned before, the structure with competitors was certain functionality was only achievable in certain tiers. And while that might be fine, it ended up being more of a headache than it was, and a hindrance than it was beneficial to us. So when we discussed pricing with Polymer, it was very straightforward. This is what the cost will be. This is the expected outcome. And that's exactly what we got. So it was a no-brainer.
Great. One very last question. In terms of functionality-wise, what other things which you thought were annoying in other products, or which you thought were lacking in the other products?
Yeah. One of the key features that we were looking for in this sort of technology is you don't just want to catch the problem. You want to be able to retrain behavior. So if a staff member posts PHI in a public channel, or whatever the company defines as what they don't want posted, when that comes up, you don't want it to just disappear, because that doesn't create a feedback loop for continuous improvement. One of the functions, one of the features of Polymer is that it will redact the sensitive parts of the message and display a message stating the company policy. So not only is it catching the instances which are outside of acceptable, but it also retrains staff behavior and able to not do it again.
Great. Well, thank you, David. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.